Ladies and gentlemen, today let me ask you a question. What if I told you there's one nutrient, one single vitamin that could help you preserve your muscle mass even when you're not training, when you're recovering, when you're fasting, or even when life throws you off your schedule for nearly 2 weeks? Vitamin D is perhaps one of the most misunderstood yet powerful nutrients in the human body. Many think of it simply as the sunshine vitamin, something we get from a little outdoor exposure or a supplement during the winter months. But the truth is, vitamin D is far more than just a vitamin. It functions in the body more like a hormone, specifically a serosteroid hormone that communicates directly with your DNA. That's a bold statement, but it's grounded in science. Once consumed or synthesized through sunlight, vitamin D goes through two critical transformations. First in the liver, where it becomes 25-hydroxy-vitamin D, and then in the kidneys, where it is converted to the active form 125-dihydroxy-vitamin D. This final form acts as a hormone and binds to receptors in virtually every cell in the body, including muscle tissue. This hormone-like behavior makes vitamin D uniquely positioned to influence many aspects of human health. But one of the most crucial roles it plays, especially for anyone concerned with strength, physique, or performance, is in muscle preservation. The muscle tissue in your body is constantly undergoing change. Even when you're not working out, your muscles are not static. They're in a constant state of turnover, breaking down, and rebuilding in response to stimuli like movement, nutrition, sleep, and stress. During times of rest, illness, injury, or even short-term inactivity, the body can shift into a catabolic state. In this state, the body begins to break down muscle tissue in order to fuel other survival processes. This is where vitamin D steps in as a biological safeguard. It communicates with vitamin D receptors found in skeletal muscle to send a very specific message: preserve, don't destroy. These receptors are like switches, and when vitamin D binds to them, it alters the behavior of the cell, encouraging anabolic and muscle building or preserving pathways and suppressing catabolic and muscle wasting processes. Numerous studies have shown that people with optimal vitamin D levels tend to have greater muscle strength, better physical performance, and lower rates of muscle loss compared to those with deficiencies. This is not anecdotal. The data spans across various demographics, from elite athletes to the elderly to patients in hospitals recovering from surgeries or illnesses. For example, research from the University of Birmingham showed that even short periods of immobilization, like being in bed due to injury, led to significantly less muscle loss in those who had healthy vitamin D levels. This means that even when the mechanical stimulus of weight training or physical activity is removed, vitamin D can act like a cellular signal to hold on to lean muscle mass. What makes this even more interesting is that the effectiveness of vitamin D on muscle is not just about quantity. It's about cellular availability and bioactivation. Just taking a vitamin D supplement doesn't guarantee results. Your body has to be able to convert that supplement into its active hormonal form and deliver it efficiently to the cells that need it. Factors such as magnesium levels, calcium balance, and the presence of vitamin K2 all affect how well your body utilizes vitamin D. If magnesium is low, the enzymes required for converting vitamin D into its active form may not function correctly. If calcium is mismanaged, it may cause vitamin D to calcify soft tissue instead of supporting muscle and bone health. That's why vitamin D doesn't act alone. It is part of an orchestra of micronutrients that all need to be balanced to make the full impact on muscle tissue. Another overlooked aspect of vitamin D's muscle preserving power lies in its interaction with other hormones, particularly testosterone, estrogen, and insulin. Vitamin D boosts testosterone production in men by supporting the function of Leydig cells in the testes, which are responsible for producing this critical anabolic hormone. In women, it helps balance estrogen, which also plays a key role in muscle tone and preservation. Furthermore, vitamin D has been shown to enhance insulin sensitivity. When your body responds better to insulin, it's better at using glucose for fuel rather than breaking down muscle for energy. That metabolic efficiency is crucial during times of fasting, caloric restriction, or stress, all of which can increase the risk of muscle catabolism if not managed properly. It's also important to understand that not everyone absorbs or utilizes vitamin D the same way. Factors like skin tone, age, geographic location, and even body fat percentage all play a role. People with darker skin need more sun exposure to produce adequate levels of vitamin D due to higher melanin content, which blocks ultraviolet rays. Older adults naturally lose some capacity to synthesize vitamin D through their skin. Those living in northern latitudes may go months without strong enough sun exposure to maintain optimal levels. And individuals with higher body fat percentages may sequester vitamin D in fat tissue, making it less available to the rest of the body. All of these variables make it essential for each person to personalize their vitamin D strategy, starting with a blood test to identify their baseline levels and adjust their intake accordingly. The recommended daily allowance of vitamin D for adults is often set far too low to achieve optimal muscle-preserving effects. Many experts in functional medicine and performance science suggest that levels between 50 and 70 N/M health are ideal for muscle maintenance, immune health, and hormonal balance. Getting there often requires supplementing with 4,000 to 5,000 IU of vitamin D3 daily, especially during winter or in people who don't get regular sun exposure. This dosage is generally considered safe for the majority of adults, particularly when combined with K2 and magnesium to ensure proper absorption and activation. What makes this information so valuable is its accessibility. We're not talking about a secret supplement only available to athletes or bodybuilders. We're talking about a natural, affordable, and widely available compound that anyone can access with a little education and consistency. The secret to muscle preservation isn't locked away in an exotic herb or a $100 0 cents bottle of lab-engineered powder. It's in the simple, often overlooked power of understanding how your body works. Vitamin D is a foundational tool in that system, one that, when properly applied, allows you to recover faster, train smarter, and hold on to your hard-earned gains even when life gets in the way. So when you consider the impact of just 12 days away from the gym, whether due to illness, travel, or rest, don't panic. Don't assume your muscle will vanish overnight. Instead, trust in the biology, support your body with the right inputs, and let vitamin D do what it's been designed to do through millions of years of human evolution, help you survive, adapt, and preserve what matters most. The connection between vitamin D deficiency and muscle loss is not theoretical. It's grounded in hard clinical evidence gathered from studies on real people in real-world conditions. What the science tells us is clear. When vitamin D levels are low, muscle mass and function decline. This decline is more rapid, more severe, and more difficult to reverse than most people realize. While the average person might think muscle is only lost due to aging or lack of exercise, the truth is that biochemical conditions inside the body, especially the hormonal and molecular environment shaped by nutrients like vitamin D, have a massive influence on how quickly muscle breaks down or is preserved. Scientists now know that vitamin D acts as a key regulator in maintaining lean mass, especially during periods of inactivity, stress, caloric restriction, or aging. In clinical settings, the evidence is particularly compelling. Elderly patients who are naturally at greater risk of both vitamin D deficiency and muscle loss show dramatically better muscle retention when their vitamin D levels are corrected. For instance, studies in geriatric wards have found that patients who were given regular doses of vitamin D during hospital stays experienced significantly less loss of muscle tone and strength than those who remain deficient. These are people who are confined to beds for days or weeks, unable to move around, much less exercise. Under normal circumstances, inactivity like that would result in noticeable atrophy. But with optimal vitamin D levels, their bodies held onto muscle much better than expected. That's because vitamin D interacts directly with muscle fibers, especially the fast-twitch type 2 fibers, which are the most prone to breakdown during periods of rest or disuse. What's even more striking is that these effects aren't limited to the elderly or the sick. Younger people, athletes, and healthy adults also suffer when their vitamin D levels drop. Multiple sports science journals have published studies showing that even mild deficiencies can impair recovery, lower performance, and reduce strength gains. In one well-known study involving a group of young male athletes, those who were found to be deficient in vitamin D were more likely to experience muscle fatigue, weakness, and slower recovery after exercise. When their levels were corrected, they not only recovered faster, but also gained more strength from training over the following week. This strongly suggests that vitamin D doesn't just help with preventing muscle loss, it may also optimize the gains from training by creating a more anabolic internal environment. Then there's the question of what happens when the body is under stress. Think about a time when you were sick for a week, or traveling and missing meals, or working long hours with little sleep. In these scenarios, your body enters a catabolic state, prioritizing short-term survival over long-term muscle maintenance. This is a natural biological response. When your brain perceives a threat, it tells your body to conserve energy, often by breaking down muscle to convert into glucose or amino acids. The problem is that if this happens too often or for too long, it leads to noticeable muscle degradation. However, studies have shown that adequate vitamin D levels can blunt this catabolic response. It doesn't eliminate it entirely, that's not realistic, but it significantly reduces the intensity and speed of muscle loss by reinforcing anabolic signaling and supporting protein synthesis even during periods of stress. The mechanism behind this is centered on vitamin D's influence on several key hormones and cellular processes. First, it modulates the release of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Chronically high cortisol is known to break down muscle and suppress testosterone and growth hormone. Vitamin D helps regulate cortisol output by supporting adrenal function and modulating the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis. With more balanced cortisol levels, your muscle tissue is less likely to be broken down for emergency energy use. Second, vitamin D increases sensitivity to insulin. Insulin is not only important for blood sugar regulation. It's also one of the most anabolic hormones in the body. When muscle cells respond well to insulin, they absorb nutrients more effectively and maintain higher rates of protein synthesis. This keeps muscles fuller, stronger, and more resistant to catabolism. There are also direct cellular pathways that vitamin D activates in muscle cells. It increases the expression of genes responsible for muscle protein synthesis while down-regulating the ones involved in proteolysis, the process of breaking down muscle protein. This happens inside the nuclei of muscle cells, where vitamin D binds to nuclear receptors and influences gene expression at a molecular level. What this means practically is that your body is constantly receiving instructions either to build and preserve muscle or to break it down. Vitamin D helps ensure those instructions lean toward growth and preservation. The timing and magnitude of muscle loss due to deficiency are also alarming. Studies show that in as little as 2 weeks of inactivity, adults can lose as much as 7% to 10% of their muscle strength. In more extreme cases, such as hospitalization, the loss can be even faster. When you combine inactivity with a deficiency in vitamin D, that rate of loss increases even more dramatically. This is not a slow creeping loss. It's a rapid, visible decline. In clinical rehabilitation centers where patients are recovering from surgery or illness, one of the first steps to preserve mobility and independence is correcting vitamin D levels. That's because therapists and doctors know that unless this nutrient is addressed, all the physical therapy and nutritional interventions in the world won't be enough to stop the spiral of weakness and muscle degradation. One particular population where this has been studied extensively is astronauts. In space, the lack of gravity causes muscles to atrophy extremely quickly. NASA has tested multiple countermeasures to combat this, including resistance bands, protein loading, and pharmacological interventions. One of the most effective and consistent strategies has been vitamin D supplementation. Astronauts who maintain higher vitamin D levels lose less muscle during extended missions and recover more quickly upon return to Earth. This is one of the most extreme examples of muscle catabolism imaginable, and even there, vitamin D has proven to be a powerful tool for preservation. All of this science brings us to a single conclusion. Vitamin D is not optional when it comes to preserving muscle mass, especially during times of stress, illness, or inactivity. Whether you're taking a break from training, recovering from an injury, working through a tough schedule, or simply getting older, the body's natural inclination is to reduce muscle when it's not being used. That's a survival mechanism built into our biology. But vitamin D offers a powerful way to counterbalance that tendency. By ensuring your internal environment is supportive of muscle retention, you give yourself a major advantage in maintaining strength, health, and resilience, regardless of external circumstances. So while it might seem like a simple, routine nutrient, vitamin D is in fact a cornerstone of muscle preservation. When you understand the depth of its impact on hormonal regulation, cellular signaling, stress management, and protein synthesis, it becomes clear that no serious fitness, health, or longevity strategy should ignore it. This is not a trend or a temporary fix. It's a foundational principle backed by decades of scientific research. And for those willing to pay attention to the details of their biology, it can make the difference between losing ground and holding the line. When most people think of supplementation, they assume that simply taking a pill every morning is enough to meet their nutritional needs. But the truth is, when it comes to vitamin D, especially for preserving muscle mass and optimizing body composition, how you take it is just as important as what you take. The reality is that vitamin D is not absorbed or activated efficiently in the body unless it's delivered with precision and supported by other key nutrients and lifestyle factors. Getting the science of vitamin D supplementation right can be the difference between wasting your effort and unlocking a significant biological advantage. If you're relying on vitamin D to help maintain your strength, muscle tone, and resilience, you have to approach it like a protocol, not a random habit. The first key element is the form of vitamin D you're taking. Most supplements on the market come in two forms: vitamin D2, ergo calciferol, and vitamin D3, cholecalciferol. So take a glance at the data shows how accurate your score is. If you're taking a cholecalciferol, then the chances of you being even more susceptible to both burnout or vitamin D3 cholecalciferol. The body absorbs and utilizes D3 far more efficiently than D2. Vitamin D3 is the same form your skin synthesizes when exposed to sunlight, and it's also the one that more effectively raises and sustains your blood levels of 25-hydroxy vitamin D, the marker most commonly used to assess vitamin D status. When studies compare D2 to D3 in terms of their effectiveness, D3 wins every time, especially when it comes to muscle health and strength. So the first rule of smart supplementation is this: always use vitamin D3 if you're serious about results. Next, we need to talk about dosage. The standard recommended dietary allowance, RDA, for vitamin D is often too low to produce the biological effects that support muscle retention and performance. Many official guidelines suggest 600 to 800 IU per day for adults, but these levels were set with bone health in mind, not muscle function, immune support, or hormonal balance. Research in the field of sports medicine and endocrinology shows that most adults need between 2,000 and 5,000 IU of vitamin D3 per day to reach optimal blood levels, especially if they don't get much sun exposure. Individuals with darker skin tones, higher body fat, or those living in northern latitudes often need even more due to decreased natural synthesis and increased storage in fat tissue. Regular testing of blood levels is essential to know how much you personally need, because vitamin D status varies widely based on lifestyle, body type, and genetics. Timing also plays a role. Although vitamin D can be taken at any time of day, recent evidence suggests that taking it earlier in the day may better align with your body's circadian rhythm and hormonal cycles. That's because vitamin D influences the production of cortisol and other hormones involved in alertness, metabolism, and mood. Taking it in the morning may enhance your daytime energy, help regulate sleep at night, and more effectively support your training and recovery routine. On the flip side, taking high doses of vitamin D at night might interfere with melatonin production in some individuals, potentially disrupting sleep patterns. This doesn't affect everyone the same way, but it's something worth experimenting with if you want to maximize benefits. One of the most overlooked aspects of effective vitamin D supplementation is the need for cofactors, supporting nutrients that enable its proper absorption and utilization. First on that list is vitamin K2. While vitamin D helps your body absorb calcium, vitamin K2 tells calcium where to go. Without K2, there's a risk that the calcium you absorb might be deposited in the arteries instead of bones or muscles. This could potentially increase the risk of arterial calcification and reduce the muscular benefits of supplementation. Vitamin K2 activates a protein called osteocalcin, which helps direct calcium into bone tissue and away from soft tissue. In combination, D3 and K2 work synergistically to strengthen bones and muscles, which is why they should almost always be taken together in a muscle preservation protocol. The next critical cofactor is magnesium D. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic processes in the body, and it is essential for the conversion of vitamin D into its active hormonal form, 1,25-D-hydroxy vitamin D. Without enough magnesium, your body may not be able to turn on the vitamin D you're consuming, which means your muscle cells won't receive the anabolic signal they need to maintain and grow. Unfortunately, most people are magnesium deficient and don't even realize it. This deficiency can completely undermine your vitamin D supplementation efforts. Foods rich in magnesium include leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, almonds, and dark chocolate. But many people need a supplement, especially if they train hard, sweat a lot, or consume a lot of caffeine, all of which can deplete magnesium levels. Also important is the presence of dietary fat when taking your vitamin D. This nutrient is fat soluble, meaning it dissolves in fat and is absorbed in the small intestine with the help of bile. Taking vitamin D on an empty stomach or with a low-fat meal significantly reduces absorption. On the other hand, consuming it with healthy fat like olive oil, avocado, eggs, or fatty fish can improve absorption by up to 50%. This is one of the simplest yet most overlooked ways to enhance the effectiveness of supplementation. If you've been taking your vitamin D with water or black coffee in the morning, there's a good chance your body hasn't been absorbing it efficiently. Adjusting this one habit can dramatically improve your results. There's also the issue of consistency. Vitamin D levels don't skyrocket overnight. It often takes several weeks or even months of consistent daily intake to bring blood levels into the optimal range. Many people make the mistake of taking vitamin D inconsistently, missing days, switching brands, or stopping once they feel better. But this stops the muscle preserving effects right in their tracks. The goal is to build a stable baseline in your blood, one that your muscles, nerves, and immune system can rely on. The only way to get there is through consistent daily habits. That's why many high performers build their supplementation routine into something they do at the same time every day, just like brushing their teeth or making their bed. There are even advanced strategies that athletes and professionals use to optimize their protocol. Some people choose to cycle their dosage seasonally, using higher doses in winter when sunlight is minimal and reducing intake in summer when sun exposure is more frequent. Others combine their vitamin D regimen with infrared sauna sessions, breath work, or cold exposure to enhance mitochondrial health and muscular recovery. While these biohacks may not be necessary for everyone, they reflect an important mindset. Optimizing vitamin D is not just about avoiding deficiency, it's about unlocking peak physiological performance, especially in relation to muscle maintenance and growth. For those who want to go even deeper, there are blood tests that measure not just your total 25-hydroxy vitamin D, but also your vitamin D binding protein and active hormone levels. These tests can help identify how well your body is converting and using the vitamin D you're taking, and whether you may have genetic polymorphisms that affect your vitamin D metabolism. With this data, you can personalize your protocol even further and achieve better results faster. In the end, what makes vitamin D supplementation powerful is not just that it fills a nutritional gap, it's that it gives you leverage over one of the most fundamental biological systems in your body. Your muscles don't just respond to training and protein, they respond to the hormonal signals in your bloodstream. Vitamin D, when taken properly, is one of the clearest, strongest, and most reliable signals you can send. It tells your body, stay strong, preserve mass, build resilience. And when you get the protocol right, from form and dose to cofactors and timing, you transform a simple vitamin into a powerful daily ritual for strength, health, and high performance. When we talk about the benefits of vitamin D in preserving muscle mass, it's important to understand the situations in real life where this becomes not just helpful, but absolutely critical. Muscle loss doesn't happen in isolation. It's not something that only affects bodybuilders or fitness enthusiasts. Muscle mass is directly tied to how we function every single day. From standing up out of a chair, to climbing stairs, to recovering from illness, or simply having enough energy to move through life, muscle mass is our core resource. And in the face of stress, aging, travel, poor nutrition, or lack of movement, this precious resource starts slipping away. The good news is that with proper support, especially through vitamin D, the body can hold on to its strength even in the most difficult circumstances. It all comes down to knowing when and how to take action and understanding the true importance of this often neglected vitamin in various real-world scenarios. Consider injury, whether it's a sprain, a post-surgery recovery period, or a back issue that forces you to stay off your feet. The first thing that begins to deteriorate is muscle tissue. In some cases, individuals can lose up to 1% of their total muscle mass for every day of complete bed rest. That means within 2 weeks of inactivity, you can experience up to 10% muscle loss. But research has shown that individuals with sufficient levels of vitamin D preserve more muscle tissue during periods of immobilization. The nutrient helps maintain protein synthesis, reduces inflammation around the injury site, and keeps hormone levels like testosterone and IGF-1 at more stable levels, all of which support muscle retention. For someone who's injured, this can mean the difference between a fast, strong comeback or a long, frustrating road to rebuilding lost strength. Another common scenario where vitamin D becomes essential is during weight loss or caloric restriction. When you're cutting calories, especially aggressively, your body doesn't just burn fat. It starts pulling from muscle tissue to use for energy. This process, called muscle catabolism, is one of the reasons many people lose strength and feel weaker during dieting phases. But vitamin D helps signal the body to preserve lean mass mass while encouraging the use of fat as the primary energy source. It improves insulin sensitivity, which helps shuttle nutrients into muscle cells more efficiently, and it balances hormones that regulate appetite and metabolism. When you're in a deficit, having optimal vitamin D levels can be the secret weapon that allows you to get lean without sacrificing muscle. This is particularly important for athletes, bodybuilders, and anyone looking to improve their physique without undermining their strength. Now, think about stress, not just physical stress, but emotional and psychological stress. High pressure jobs, family responsibilities, lack of sleep, and chronic mental fatigue all elevate cortisol levels. Cortisol, when elevated over time, breaks down muscle, weakens the immune system, and slows recovery. What's fascinating is that vitamin D plays a direct role in regulating the stress response. It interacts with the adrenal glands and the HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, to reduce the severity and duration of stress reactions. People with healthy vitamin D levels have more stable mood, better energy regulation, and more resilience under pressure. In terms of muscle, this means less involuntary breakdown and a faster return to homeostasis after stress. Life doesn't stop, and most of us don't have the luxury to avoid stress completely. But when your body is equipped with what it needs, it doesn't have to lose strength every time you hit a rough patch. One of the most dramatic examples of where vitamin D shows its importance is in the process of aging. Starting in your 30s, your body naturally begins to lose muscle mass, a condition called sarcopenia. Without intervention, people can lose 3-8% of their muscle mass per decade, and this rate accelerates after age 60. Muscle loss in older adults leads to loss of balance, higher fall risk, slower recovery from illness, and eventually loss of independence. Numerous studies have shown that seniors with optimal vitamin D levels maintain higher muscle density, better balance, and more mobility. It helps preserve type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers, which are responsible for power and speed, two things that dramatically decline with age. For older adults, ensuring adequate vitamin D intake is not about aesthetics or gym performance. It's about freedom, safety, and quality of life. It's about continuing to live independently and avoiding the long, hard decline into frailty and dependence. Vitamin D is also critical during periods of illness or hospitalization. When someone is sick, especially with viral infections, autoimmune diseases, or chronic inflammation, the body is in a hypercatabolic state. It breaks down tissues for fuel, including muscle. Studies on patients with pneumonia, sepsis, and even COVID-19 revealed that those with higher vitamin D levels had shorter recovery times and better preservation of lean mass. This is because vitamin D is not just a muscle-preserving nutrient, it's also an immunomodulator. It helps reduce systemic inflammation, supports the immune response, and regulates the activity of T cells and cytokines. In simple terms, it keeps your immune system strong without overreacting, and that moderation helps preserve energy and tissue. Even in the most extreme cases, patients in intensive care units, those who had better vitamin D levels, needed fewer days on ventilators, experienced less muscle wasting, and left the hospital stronger. Let's not forget lifestyle patterns like travel and seasonal shifts that can affect movement, nutrition, and exposure to sunlight. Traveling, especially across time zones or to colder climates, can throw off your sleep, your circadian rhythm, and your training routine. Many people find they lose strength or muscle definition after extended trips. Often it's not the break from training that causes the loss, it's the dip in vitamin D due to less sunlight, disrupted schedules, and lack of supplementation. Winter, similarly, poses a huge risk. Between November and March, in many parts of the world, the sun's rays are too weak to stimulate any significant vitamin D production in the skin, even if you're outside. This seasonal deficiency is linked to not only mood drops and fatigue, but also reductions in strength and increased muscle soreness. Maintaining your levels during winter through consistent supplementation can be the single factor that keeps your gains intact while others lose momentum. This brings us to one of the most underestimated areas of health and muscle performance: mental wellness. Depression, anxiety, burnout, and low motivation are not just psychological. They manifest physically. When your mental state is down, your movement decreases, your recovery slows, your hormonal profile becomes imbalanced, and your risk of muscle loss increases. Vitamin D plays a profound role in mood regulation. It influences dopamine, serotonin, and other neurotransmitters that shape your sense of motivation and drive. People with sufficient vitamin D levels report higher energy, better focus, and more consistency in their routines. And with consistency comes better adherence to training, better food choices, and ultimately better body composition. The thread running through all these situations is this: life is unpredictable. No matter how disciplined or fit you are, there will be times when you can't train, when you're sick, when you're stressed, when your sleep suffers, or when the environment works against you. You don't always have control over your external circumstances, but you can control your internal environment. Vitamin D is one of the simplest, most powerful ways to protect your muscle, your energy, your strength, and your confidence through those tough times. It's not a magic pill, but it's close, because when used wisely, consistently, and intentionally, it equips your body to resist weakness, to recover faster, and to keep moving forward even when life slows you down.